Hello everybody. Welcome to Pink Sheep and Friends Friday. I hope you guys are having a wonderful start to your Friday. Let's see. I had a couple of reminders before we jump in. Next Tuesday, we are going to be starting the first section of my mini puff crochet along. So this is the mini puff jacket. Had to wear it since the crochet along kicks off on Tuesday. So if you're interested, you can use, I think, the link in my bio. I have some info, or just the last post about the cardigan, but that's going to be starting soon. And if you want to join in, you can also send me a message if you're not sure how to join in on the crochet along, and I can let you know. And then my other announcement, I had one other announcement this morning, and that is that I have new enamel pins in the Etsy shop. So I did a restock, and you can now get the collector pin. I don't think it's going to focus. It's not going to focus. But the collector yarn tarot card design and the hooked tattoo flash design are now available as enamel pins. So that's exciting. And I just wanted to let you guys know I was trying to get those available by the holidays. So super excited about that. Okay, we are here this morning to chat with Natalie of the Twisted Hatter. And I am super excited to bring her on because I have been following her for a hot minute. And one of the things that I love most about her designs is that, in my opinion, her designs she sets herself apart from just like being a crochet designer to being what I would consider more of a crochet artist, which she says in her profile. And her pieces are just almost like sculptures. So I'm super excited to bring her on, especially because this is her busiest time of the year with pattern sales being Halloween time. And I would love to know from you guys if anyone is making one of her designs as part of your Halloween costume this year. So let me know. But I am going to go ahead and bring her on. I did see that she is here. So, show. Okay, now my coffee too. Hello.
Goes the other way. Good morning.
Oh, it happens like every time. I think it's like,
well,
yeah.
I tried to prepare ahead of time and I could not figure out how to make it automatically go this way. So I was like, it's fine if someone sees the ring light.
Well, I have to say, your hair looks amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, I saw it in your last reel.
6-something years. I was terrified I would fry it all off because I use black box hair dye in my hair, which you're not ever supposed to do if you ever want to lighten it again. It's still here, so.
Yeah,
I want to say your sweater is spectacular.
Oh, thanks.
Like, spectacular.
This one, the mini puff.
It's amazing.
I didn't know if you saw. Oh my gosh, I have to go get it now, just in case, because if you haven't seen it, this one was a request because I made one called the Power Puff jacket. I have to go in this dark room to get it out of the room. And I had someone who was like, okay, that's really cool, but I just don't think I can wear something that's that gigantic. So can you make a version of it that's smaller? So the one I'm wearing is the smaller version.
Well, I'm all about a big one.
So let's see. I'm going to show you. I'm going to have to actually put this on for it to be appreciated. But this is probably one of my favorite designs I think I had ever done because it was just so out there. I used the jumbo blanket yarn. So that is the big old chunky pocket.
I would fall asleep.
Oh, yeah.
In that.
Yeah. It's like super cozy. So this is the big boy, and then we have the mini puff. So we got the Power Puff and the mini puff.
Now, will it work if you like elongate it? Because I'm not great with like shorter stuff, but like if I made it to where it goes like just slightly below my bum, would that work fine, you think?
Yeah, so you have anyone who has any experience whatsoever following patterns, when you see how the construction works, because I work my back panel and then you actually work your front panels off the back panel straight up like a U shape. And then they flip over the front. So you just make your back panel longer, make your front panels the same amount longer, and then you go from there. Because everything else is worked off of that U shape.
Yeah, that's going to have to be done.
Yeah.
I'm all about it. But, I mean, granted, I'm in Texas, so, like, I don't know how you it'll be. But, like, it was a little bit colder here, so.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the South, so I had a lot of people when I was doing craft shows. I would have my table full of all of these, like, cozy, chunky pieces. And people would come up to me in Atlanta, Georgia, and say, well, I wish it actually got cold enough here to wear these. I was like, whatever. I get cold every winter time here. So.
Well, yeah, like I'm all about big sweaters and stuff, so that's gonna be a must do. Because yeah, I put a hood on that and just sleep in it constantly.
Yes, I would love to see it with a hood too. I will send you this pattern so you can try it out. You just have to let me know how it goes, because I feel like that would be super fun to see the extra length and all of that.
I can do it in like regular like Bernat blanket. You think it would work just fine, right?
So if you use regular Bernat blanket, you can double it up. So I did
so it's
have
that chunky.
It's a 25 millimeter hook.
Okay, I don't own that.
Well, you can get cheap ones at Michael's if you want to try it. Because like I said, so this one is much smaller. Most of my cardigans are like a 16 millimeter hook, but that one is the chunky boy. So that one's 25 millimeter hook. And the yarn that I used was this stuff. And I'll compare it so you can see the difference. So this is the mainstay. This was just Walmart brand yarn that I used, but it's like the super chunky, because this is the regular blanket yarn.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I've seen that really thick stuff. I just haven't bought it before. So I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I can do with that.
But I had a few testers who doubled up Bernat blanket. So it was a little holier. It doesn't have as much of the fluff because it even double stranded. It's, going to be a little bit lighter weight, but they still turned out really cool. So, yeah. Challenge.
Well, does it come in multiple sizes, or is it one size?
Oh, it's the full range, extra small to 5X. So there's 9 different size ranges.
Even if I did a larger size with a thinner yarn, it would be the exact same thing. It would just, it would shrink it.
Usually it works that way.
Yeah. Possibly. Trial and error.
It's worth a try, for sure. Well, we totally skipped an intro for you. So for anyone who is here and does not know who you are, just let people know who you are and what you do.
So I am Natalie Allen, aka the Twisted Hatter. I crochet. I guess I'm a designer. I think I prefer like just crocheting and, changing other people's stuff more than designing, but designing is also, something I enjoy, I guess. It's not the pattern writing portion, but
Yes. Yeah. So when did you start crocheting? How did that start for you?
So, like years and years and years ago, my sister-in-law showed me how to like make a basic beanie. And like I had made like a couple of those, and I was like, this isn't really for me. Like, I'd wear a beanie, and I was like, I don't even think it looks good on me. Like, crochet isn't for me. And then years later, my son wanted this mohawk hat that he had seen in a catalog, and I think it was about $60 or $70. And my husband's military, and I was like, we can't afford that. And so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna give it a shot. I had totally forgotten how to crochet and everything. I was just kind of like, you know what, I'll just try. And it had like these 2 skulls on the side, and so I made it, and it turned out pretty good, minus like the mohawk thing wasn't fantastic. But so my son looks at it and he was like, I don't want it. And I was like, well, awesome. I just went through all that work. Well, my brother just happened to be visiting, and he was like, dude, I want that. And I was like, for real? And he was like, yeah. And so he took it, and my brothers would do like snowboarding in California and stuff. And
Hmm.
all of a sudden, like he started, like people started stopping him on the slopes and stuff. And so he'd just be
Yeah.
like, "Oh yeah, my sister made it." And that's really how everything started, was just, you know, and then I realized, oh, I don't have to just make like a base, not that there's anything wrong with
Yeah.
making a basic beanie or a scarf or anything like
Hmm.
that, but it just wasn't something that inspired me at all. And then when
Yeah.
I realized that I could just do whatever I wanted, I
Yeah.
was like, oh, and so, I'd, just make random stuff, and then, people would order it, and it kind of started from there. And then the designing thing, well, I guess pattern writing part, um, just like, because I didn't read patterns, I definitely couldn't
Hmm.
write one. Um, and then my Kraken hat went viral, and then people
Hmm.
started like writing patterns of it before I was able to or anything. So then that's
Oh,
how it started, was because I was like, hey, wait, no, like that's my work.
yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I kind of, it went into that to where I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to make something, that I should probably write a pattern for it. That
Yeah.
way other people aren't doing it with my work. So,
That's so true. Well, and that leads me to a question about, you said you made this hat for your son.
yeah.
Did you just freehand it?
Yeah, so for years, that's all I ever did was freehand. Like, I tried to read a pattern one
Wow.
time, and I was like, the thing is that I didn't have to read a pattern. So,
Hmm.
I could freehand, so it wasn't an issue. So when I looked at a pattern, I was like, nah, this is too hard to read. Like, I don't understand this, like all the HDCs and DCs and
Yeah.
da, da, da. I was like, So I wasn't forced to read it because I was like, I could just freehand something. But then when I was forced to write a pattern, then I was like, oh, okay. So I just sat there with like a cheat sheet, like it said HDC half double crochet,
Hmm.
EC double crochet. And I just sat there and I would look back and forth. And then I think it's helped me so much learning how to like read patterns too, because yes, there's YouTube and stuff like that, but like a lot of people who do like crazy intricate designs and stuff, they're not going to have a YouTube video for something that takes 20 something hours to make. You have to learn how to read a pattern.
Which is
um,
like you. I mean, your patterns, we talked about this a little bit when we got to chat before this, that it's it's crazy to think of how you would even go about making an entire tutorial for one of your patterns.
it takes so long to make it. Like, even my Kraken one, since that was my very first pattern, I ended up doing like kind of a YouTube video for it,
Hmm.
but it was just like, okay, you do this and this, just the basic steps of how you do each portion. But
Yeah.
then people complain, like, because it's not even supposed to be a full tutorial, because I'm not
Yes.
giving away my pattern for free. But I get people complaining, well, you don't show how to do every row or every round. I'm like, yeah, no,
Hmm.
because that would be a very long video. I mean, it would just
Yes.
take
Exactly.
but
Well, and I don't feel like a lot of your patterns have many repeats. I mean,
no,
like, I feel like with the way that they're structured, it's almost every round is probably unique.
is different. Yeah.
Yeah. I have to say, I love the fact that I went on your Etsy shop and I was looking through your reviews because I was actually looking at some of your patterns because we found out we were going to be dressing up for Halloween. And I was like, but that may have to be next year because I just don't think I can finish one that quickly. We're getting a little too close to the edge now. But um, the reviews, especially for the Beetlejuice style sandworm
Uh,
hat, how people were like, just stick with it. Like, it's going to take you a while. Like, it's probably going to push you, but like, stick with it because it's amazing. People are going to love it, But I love that that was a big part of the reviews of a lot of your patterns are just stick with it. Like, this is it's not supposed to be easy, but it's worth it, right?
because nothing that's going to turn out spectacular is going to be, it's not a 15 or 30-minute beanie. Like, at no point
Yep.
do I claim that, but I do have people that complain that like this took a long time. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah. It does. Like,
Yeah.
because
You're making
I,
a work of art.
I tell people, because a lot of people like to type like queen and stuff in the comments. I'm like, nah, like queen, that's not my thing at all. Unless you want to call me like the queen of torture, absolutely. Because with every single one of my patterns, if you aren't cursing my name, it's probably not my pattern. Like, your hands are gonna hurt. You're gonna be sitting there cursing me about the teeth on something, or but at the end, it's always like, oh my gosh, look what I made. And that's what I enjoy is, you know, even with my own stuff, when I'm doing it, I'm like, oh, why did I do this? This sucks. But then afterwards, I'm like, ah.
This is why. This is why you did it. Exactly.
You know I'm live, and that's why he came up here. I'm sorry.
Who is this? Oh my gosh.
It's my cat.
Oh, he's
Every
so
time
fluffy.
I go live, he's like, oh, hello.
He's a very fluffy one.
Yeah, he's an exotic short hair, but he's...
Aw. So did you knit your sweater, by the way?
No. I bought this.
I had to ask, of course.
I can knit, but I am very slow. I'm slow at it.
Same. I have one knitting project that, I mean, like, it's literally sitting in the closet back here. That I mean, I've had it for like 5 years. I don't think it's probably ever going to get finished, but it's going to sit there. I'm not frogging it. Like, you know, I'll bring it out every now and then and do like one row.
Yeah, I'll be like, oh, that was enough, thanks.
No, then put it away for another 2 years.
Crochet ones also, I want to crochet myself a bunch of sweaters. I just need time as well for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, you know, eventually I'd like to learn to set my own time aside. I haven't learned to do that yet.
So I wanted to ask, going back again to that the first hats and first items that you were freehanding, because you said your sister-in-law, correct, was the one who taught you the initial beanie. How did you go about learning the skills that it took you to bring you from that initial beanie to where you are now? Was it mostly YouTube? What were some of the,
I actually have never watched YouTube or anything like that. I just sat there and kept playing with yarn. That's why when somebody because somebody had to help me write my first pattern, I didn't know what any of the stitches were that I was doing.
Okay.
I was just kind of like, oh, okay, let me try this, this, all type of stuff. And then when I learned what stuff was, well, because I could read is it diagram ones?
Yes.
Those
the charts.
The charts I can read. So like if I would see stuff with those kind of things, I would know that, okay, so this is this. Yeah. But I didn't, you know, other than that, like that's about all I could figure out type stuff. It was purely out of laziness though. If I would have taken the time to actually learn things properly, I probably would have been better faster. But I'm just kind of like, no, I'm not gonna bother. Even with tutorials now, like needle felting, I'm sure there are plenty of videos out there for needle felting, but instead, like, I bought a kit and I'm just like, no, I'm just gonna try it myself.
Why not?
I'm a big fan of trial and error.
Well, and I think that's the way it is for a lot of people with a lot of things of like, we just want to jump in, you know? I mean, like, you just want to go ahead and jump in and do it and like not do hours of research. And a lot of times you don't have to, you know, it's like you said, only until later did you realize like, this probably could have helped me along my journey, but it would have
saved me a lot of time. It's even that way when people read patterns and stuff. Like, you know how you give all that information at the beginning of like what stitches are, or like, you know, where like mine, it says, please read in a certain part. It's all like the pattern tips on like, you know, this is what this means. This means this. Well, nobody wants to read that. And I understand because you get super excited and you're like, nope, I'm grabbing my yarn. I'm going to make this. And then all of a sudden I start getting questions. I'm like, you know, so if you go to that part in red where it says, please read, it's answered here. I've even done it with like Crafty Intentions patterns and stuff, because she does some like interesting things where she like jumps down rows and all sorts of stuff. So when I first did her dragon one, I was like, I'm not reading all that. Like, that's too much. I'm just gonna get started. And then I got to a point, I'm like, what's this? What are we doing? And then I scrolled back and I was like, oh, okay, so this probably should read this.
Well, and I feel like you when you talked about how you really just played around with stitches, that makes so much sense, because when I was looking back at some of your most recent reels, you did one where it was a tutorial for a stitch that was like a single crochet, half double crochet decrease, like some kind of like a combination of stitches, but also either a decrease or an increase. I can't remember which one it was, but I was like, I've never heard of that. But I feel like if you were playing around with these, you've almost had to probably name some of your own stitches.
So that one, well, not that one in particular, but like Crafty Intentions will do stuff on hers where it's like a HDC double crochet. So that way when you're decreasing, you get like a higher stitch and stuff like that. So like that I actually learned from her on stuff, but I didn't necessarily learn it from her because I was already doing it, but like I realized that because normally I'll just adjust and I'll be like, this is not something people normally do. But then when I saw that she actually wrote hers down, I was like, oh, sweet, I can do this.
Yeah.
But, I have had to, well, like things like, so back bump, you know, those kind of stuff. I didn't realize a lot of people didn't do it. I have always done it since the beginning of like, you know, on a chain and stuff because I didn't know where you're supposed to work in a chain. So I was like, well, this looks like the best spot because the other side is flat. So I was doing that. And then when people use my patterns, they're like, well, what is this? And I was like, you're working in this part. And so I did have to look up, you know, and now when you Google it, you absolutely can find back bump in a chain. So I wasn't wrong in doing that, but it was just one of those things to where, you know, you figure it out. But I think with that, it has helped me because I didn't actually know like the rules on stuff, you know, like there are rules, doesn't mean you have to follow them. But, you know, I do things differently because I would just sit there and figure stuff out a certain way, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that there has become an even bigger divide between, and not in a bad way, between kind of the classic crochet and like the modern now crochet. And I feel like there are a lot of people who are kind of breaking the rules. And I know some people don't like it, but I think that's where it is. With all of the influx of new designers, you know, sometimes the way patterns are written and structured, even if they're still correct, they may be different enough where it's like, well, you know, you're not supposed to do that. And it's like, why not? It works, you know?
I think as long as it works, it's fine. Like, you know, there are certain rules I think that should be followed because I have come across some patterns. I'm just kind of like, because, you know, if people don't give you a stitch count, it's very difficult to know if you're incorrect or if the pattern is. So I have come across them before and I'm sitting there and I'm like, I cannot get my count to add up. And so, but they don't have a count. So I'm just like, am I doing something wrong or is the pattern incorrect? Like those kind of things I feel like are pretty important. Or, you know, things like I have come across some where like everything says row and some things are round, some things are rows. So if you don't tell people ahead of time what they're doing, like they don't know really what they're doing on each round or row because it's like, am I doing a row or am I doing a round here? So like those rules I think should be followed. But other than that, like as long as you're telling people exactly what they need to do, like do whatever you want really, as long as they can follow it.
Do you include photo tutorials at all in your patterns or are they straight written?
I have a couple photos in my patterns, and the reason I do that, because mine are intermediate to advanced, and a lot of people don't like to have a ton of pictures in the pattern because a lot of people also print it out. So when they're sitting there having to print it out, and you know, and there's nothing wrong with having a ton of pictures in them, but like even for me, I'm just kind of like, I just want to get to like the writing, please. And you can do like separate ones where it's all writing and then all pictures and stuff like that. But then also with that, like Crafty Intentions does that, and it is really helpful. But then I've seen people like comment stuff and they're like, oh no, that's 65 pages worth of a pattern. I'm not buying that. It's hard. And I was like, no, she includes like photos for everything, but people don't know that or research that. And so it also scares people away. So I only include it if I feel like, okay, you really need to like see what's going on here. Like if I think you're going to have a hard part, like in joining something or something like that, then I'll add a picture because I'm like, okay, well, this would confuse me. So I'm going to put a picture here. Other than that, like, I don't know.
And you have a Facebook group for your patterns. Is that correct?
I do. Yeah. Stitchers Gone Twisted.
Stitchers Gone Twisted.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you guys can join that if you, I mean, and I feel like the Facebook groups have been super helpful. I feel like communities for designers because certain designers, especially ones like yourself who make more advanced patterns, you get a lot of questions and we can talk about that a little bit. But I feel like Facebook groups are great because you have almost like pattern experts, you know, who've done so many of your patterns that if you can't get around to answering a question in the group or on Etsy or Ravelry or somewhere faster, you may get a faster response in the group from someone in that community.
Yeah, it is super, like, I didn't want to start, it took me a long time to start a group only because I didn't want to deal with adults fighting and arguing. Like, I just, like, I don't have time to, like, you know, break fights up and stuff like that. I was like, no, I don't want to do that. But, like, honestly, it's been a dream in that group. Like, everyone is amazing. Everyone is super encouraging and helpful. And I'm just kind of like, oh, I should have done this a while ago. But you do, because I do have people that have done every single one of my patterns. And, you know, they know my style of writing and they're big into, like, because people that have followed me for a while, you know, I'll tell them, like, just trust the pattern. Like, you need to trust what's happening here. Don't sit there and do extra stuff. You just need to do what it's saying. Because, you know, people will be like, well, I chained one and turned. I'm like, does it say to? And they're like, no, then you shouldn't do it. Like, I tell you exactly what you need to do. Don't do anything else. Like, you unless you're wanting to freehand, don't change it. But and that's what people will be like, no, just keep doing what she's saying to, and you'll be fine. Like, it looks weird, but just do it.
And you can't really put in your pattern. I mean, there are situations with my patterns because they're usually shorter. You know, I keep my patterns really, really, really simple. And with them being the chunkier yarn, they're definitely a shorter pattern. But there are times where I'm like, I'll put in the pattern, like, this might look weird here, but, you know, that's normal. But you can't do that for every single point in your pattern where things might.
Right, because it's because also people don't like to read, you know, because they're going to skip all the things. So even, like, I've had people say, I don't like patterns that have a lot of writing. I understand that. I don't necessarily either. However, if it's a difficult thing, you need to read the writing because people are trying to explain here, like, what you need to do. And if you skip that, and then I also can't put in every section, please make sure to read this. Please make sure to read this. But, you know, or just trust what's happening. But that would be like every 3 rounds or rows. So, you know, that's just so much extra stuff. So I just tell people, like, please just, you know, at the beginning, please just read and follow what it says. Like, I'm begging.
Well, and that's what turns it into a 65-page pattern. You don't want a lot of words, so just read what I got, and I don't have to add anymore.
It's just at the beginning, you know, because I have done it with, like, 2 of my patterns to where, because I had a mental breakdown with one of them, like the Oogie Boogie one, because people just aren't, like, they refuse to trust what is happening in one part. Like, almost everyone has done it correctly. Like, they'll send me a picture. They're like, this is not working. I'm doing something wrong. And then I'm like, just send me a picture. And I'm like, you did it right. It's right. And they're like, I just don't understand why it's there. Well, keep going. You're on row 1. Like, you've got 17 more to go. Keep going. But, like, I had a mental breakdown. I think it was last year or the year before, just because I was like, I can't handle this anymore. It's too much. But I don't know where I was going with that.
That's okay.
I was on something there and I forgot what it was. But yeah, trust the pattern.
Yes.
Is really what it boils down to with stuff.
Yeah. So I would love to know, because you do create such interesting and unique shapes with a lot of your patterns, and lots of them. I mean, like, you've got patterns that have all of these different elements and pieces. How does that process even begin? Do you draw things? Is it all in your head? Do you just wing it? Like, how does that process for you?
So not all of them, but I, like, a couple of them I'm not really, let's say, an artist. But I do, like, draw it out ahead of time. Some of them, you know, just to see if I like the basic shape, like with the sandworm hood, or with the one that I just released also, the chomper. like I draw it out ahead of time, you know, just to see like what kind of shape I'm trying to go for, and then let's say the colors that I want to do and stuff like that. It doesn't always work out. Like the last hood did work out exactly how I drew it, but like the sandworm one, I had drawn that out years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, oh, I'm not ready to like attempt to do this. Well, the way that I had drawn it out and then the way that it translated to crochet didn't work because I forgot that like people have a head, even though I drew it on my head. So it's very different from Ami getting something to sit a certain way and then having to go like around your head. And then I'm also very big into making sure that things are, what's the word, to where it doesn't tip, stabilized or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, because I don't want it pulling too far back or too far forward and
you
stuff.
have to get the weight right. The weight ratio has to be right.
Because I have worn hoods to where like the whole thing just keeps falling off the whole time when you're having to, you know, adjust it a certain way. So like all of that kind of, you know, there'll be a bunch of frogging involved, you know, just to try to get it to where it's sitting properly. But yeah, I do try to draw it out ahead of time, and then hopefully it turns out the way I thought a lot.
Was the sandworm one the most difficult one to bring to life?
As far as getting it to like work properly, yes, I think so. Although, what was it? The predator mask, that one, the first time I did it, because I hadn't originally planned on making a pattern for it. It was somebody had messaged me and they wanted it for their kid, and they're like, this is the only thing they've ever wanted. And that kid had been having a pretty hard time in life and stuff. So I was like, you know what? I'll try. I nearly set that thing on fire so many times. I tried to write them multiple times. I ended up deleting each message, but I'd be like, I can't do this. I can't do it. It's too hard. I can't do this. But then each time I was just like, it's the only thing they've ever wanted. It's the only And so when I finally did it, I was like, oh my God. And then when people asked, and I told people, I was like, no, I will never write a pattern for this. It's too hard. Like, I don't want to.
Never.
And then when people asked, you know, I was like, you know, okay, I'll give it a shot. But I think that was my hardest to make. But yeah, the sandworm was definitely pretty, like that one took me a month, I think, to actually get it correct. Also because I kept doing the teeth, and then I'd have to pull the whole thing apart or start a new one just because I'd have to, you know, adjust it. So.
Yeah. So what has your experience been like with testing for your patterns? What has your experience been like with your testers, finding them, maintaining a core group of people? What has that experience been like for you?
So it started off really rocky, you know, because I didn't know really what you're supposed to do and all that kind of stuff. So I would just be like, hey, who wants to test? And then people would say, me, you know, so I'd be like, awesome. So I didn't at the time have like a group of people or anything. I would just send different people the thing. I was like, okay, let me know. Well, I didn't realize that you need to ask people for proof that they've, you know, at the end thing, like of a picture or, you know, that kind of stuff. And so people would be like, oh yeah, I tested it, you know, and then it would come back to where there'd be like mistakes or something. And I was like, wait, no, but I never even saw the finished product of stuff.
Yeah.
Then I realized I was like, cause that happened with the Kraken one. And then I ended up having to redo the pattern and then re-release it, which on Etsy is a nightmare, by the way. Cause you know, if people know, you can't just resend out the pattern. You have to personally email each person. And there was 3,000 of them that I had to personally email. So I learned my lesson really, really fast and the hard way on that. But now I really do have where I've had people for a couple years now that, you know, they know my style and stuff like that. But I also will have like new testers come in because I don't always want people who've made my stuff, because then they'll tell me like this part confuses me or something, you know, because they don't know my way of doing things. So that helps. I will let, I don't want to say beginners, because they do have to know what they're doing, you know, because I'm not going to be explaining what an HDC is or what a row and a round is, but they don't have to be advanced or anything. They just have to like know how to read a pattern and stuff like that. but it's also, it was a huge issue for me at the beginning where people would just take the pattern and leave. So I am very picky about that, where if anybody does that to me, it's like, no, you're never testing for me again, unless they have messaged me saying, hey, something came up, because I know life happens. It does. But if you're not going to tell me that something happened, then it'll be a one and done. Because there are people out there that will just, they just want a free pattern.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I mean, and I feel the same way. I have a really good core group of testers, and a lot of them are in the comments, like saying they would die to test for you. So you have, if you need people, but it's interesting because even now I feel like I've gotten better at vetting people. I'll check their social media. I'll see what they've done. I've got a more intricate questionnaire that they've got to go through and fill out, and jump through a few more hoops, like just to be sure, like, you guys want to actually do this. But I still have people who will just flake, who just don't ever end up responding to messages. And, I feel like anyone who gets into pattern design is going to deal with it. You're always going to have that.
So disheartening too, especially, if you're newer and stuff and you don't know that kind of stuff happens. It can be very, upsetting because, you do put all that time into writing something. And then, like, I don't ever say when a release date is or anything, because I know things can go wrong. Like, I'm at that point where I know things can go wrong, either with, let's say, the pattern, something went horribly wrong, or something else. But if people just, you have all these people testing, and then all of a sudden, like, before I used to be like, okay, I need 5 testers or whatever. Now I do quite a bit more. That way, if somebody flakes or something like that, I know I have a backup. But because I'm not going to release a pattern that hasn't been, like, tested. So, but I haven't had much issue with it now. Like, it's been pretty good. But I even, like, when I do a post on something, I'll have people show it. It doesn't have to be my pattern, but they have to show a picture of a pattern that they've used and something that they've made of that pattern, and then I'll check the two, because if you wanted to freehand and add extra stuff on something, that's fine. But if it doesn't look anything like that pattern of something else, like, I'm not sure if you've been able to follow it. And that's the one thing I am super picky about my testers with, is they need to be able to show that if they like that my pattern can turn out identical, because I'm very picky about that.
Yeah, that's unless a really smart way to do that.
Stuff, unless you want to add extra stuff, whatever. But I need to, for me, I need to be able to prove that my pattern will turn out identical to my picture. That's super important for me. So
I love that idea of making someone show, like, here's the pattern I followed and here's my finished piece. How do people apply to test for you? Do you do a call, or do you just let people kind of apply to be part of a pool?
So depending on, like, because sometimes I know who I would want to test. Like, I have certain people that I'm like, okay, this will go great for them. Let's say it's like a horror thing or something like that. I have people that I'm like, okay, I know that they're going to knock this out of the park. So I'm like, I already have them chosen. But then other times I'll just post in my group saying, hey, like, this is what I'm going to or what I want tested, put whatever you need to in the comments if you want to work. I mean, if you want to test. But then I will also check, because I put a lot of writing in my post on purpose. Because if they're not going to read and follow what I've said, automatically they're off the list. Because
so the first thing for anyone interested in testing for you is to join your group, for sure. And I mean, I feel like that's figuring out the right vetting process has been, I think it's a game changer for designers that want to keep designing, is really continuing to work on your process for finding and keeping good testers.
Yeah. Because also, because I have seen, where people do, like, tester calls on TikTok and, all that kind of stuff, which, you absolutely can. But then there's also people that will apply to test that don't actually know what any of the rules are, and they can't. That's why I don't normally have, like, a beginner test anything of mine, because they don't know if I've done something wrong or not. You know what I
Yes.
mean? So,
That's true.
and I can't put out a pattern where something is wrong, but they have to, like, I will normally I make an item and then I'll write the pattern, you know, and
Mhm.
then I'll test it at least twice more just to try to go over. But I always miss
Yeah.
stuff. I've never yet had a perfect one. I've had one with two
Uh-huh.
mistakes. I've had a couple with two mistakes and stuff, but I'm just like, oh, I do want
Yes.
the perfect one eventually, but you know.
You will. You'll get to a point where it's like, ah!
If that ever happens, something will happen. I don't know what, but um,
Celebration. Yes.
yeah, it's super important, and I think, you know, anyone that's new to designing and stuff like that, like, you do need to make sure that your testers also know what they're doing.
Mhm.
That way, they can check if you made a mistake.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when
And that they'll
you're,
tell you
go
too,
ahead.
because some people don't want to hurt your feelings, you know what I mean? And I'm like, I don't care if you hurt my feel, like, I'm not going to get my feelings hurt in the first
Yes.
place. But, like, you know, if you see a mistake, you need to tell me. Say, like, hey, this count isn't adding up. Then we'll
Yeah.
figure it out. But, like, you can't
Yep.
have people that are going to be like, oh, well, I don't want to, like, offend them. No, offend
Mhm.
them all you want, because if they release that pattern and it, like, does super well, then they then have to fix it if
Mhm.
there's a huge issue.
Yep. Yep. And I feel like sometimes testers, I know for me, it's like I need the tough love too. Like I need you to tell me, most of my stuff is garments. So you need to tell me if you're making a size that's not my size and it does not fit you the way that it should fit you. And that's, because I try to standardize everything. But if you're like, I would not wear this because it's not giving me that same look as it looks on you, then I need them to tell me, so
Yeah.
that I can change it up. Because, when you make the wearables, you want the standardized sizing to actually be standardized, to actually, if I'm wearing a cropped sweater, I don't want someone who makes the extra large to be wearing a dress, you know?
Or like
Yes,
this.
or exactly. Exactly.
And
Yes.
clothing is a whole nother thing, like, because I've been asked to do a couple, like, different sweaters and stuff like that, and I'm just like, that's a whole different ball game. Just because, like, a head is a head. Like, yes,
Yeah.
it will be bigger and smaller, but then with clothing, like, I don't know how you guys do it, because everybody's body shape is so like, nobody has the exact same body shape. You have people with
Uh-huh.
huge boobs and tiny
Yeah.
waists, or larger waists and no boobs, you know,
Yeah.
or all that kind of stuff. And there's no way to account for all of it. And I'm one of those people to where I'm like, I need it to fit exactly like it should.
Yeah.
However, it's not going to fit everyone exactly like it should, because everyone is
Yeah.
a different shape. But I'm just like, I don't know how people do that.
Yeah, I'll tell you. So, I always said my first design that I ever released was a crop top, which is ridiculous. Like to try to make it, because again, boobs, like
Yeah.
boobs are all different sizes, all different shapes, all different, all of that. And my first pattern, it's pretty rough, like trying to do that. And I think I made up to like maybe an XL. I think I went small to XL, which for my first pattern, I was like, this is great, I'm trying this out. But I said I was never going to make another crop top again, because my goal is to be as size inclusive as possible. And I was like, that scares the heck out of me to try to make something that will fit such a wide range of sizes and still look right and be supportive and all of those things. And I kept getting asked, and my testers kept saying, like, you can do it. They're like a cheer squad, and that's the great thing is the testing community is wonderful, and they want me to push myself and try things. And I ended up, I now have 2 crop tops that I released this summer, and I had for each test 60 testers, because I wanted every possible bra size that they were willing to bring me. So I was like, oh, yeah, don't have that one, come on board. Don't have that one, come on board. And like filling all of, like, I have a chart, a bra chart that goes from like 30 double A to I think 50, what is it, GH or I don't even remember. It goes like way up there. And, but it was so much fun, to see in the
No.
end, all of these women wearing these crop tops.
Okay,
and
yes,
all their
that was,
sizes.
when they're done, yes. I was just thinking the testing part doesn't sound
Oh,
like
yeah.
that sounds like because I'm supposed to put out a top pattern, but at
Uh-huh.
this point I'm kind of like, maybe I'll just make a YouTube video and be like, hey, if you add a couple more stitches, it'll be
Yeah.
fine. Because
Yes.
boobs. I mean, like,
Yes. Uh-huh.
I love them, but like, I don't want to designer them.
Yes. And the good thing was the two that I released, one of them is not my favorite for everyday wear. It's really much better and more supportive for someone who has a larger chest. Whereas the second one that I released is the opposite. It's really good and very supportive up to maybe like a D cup. And once you get above that, I'm like, you can make this one. It's, it's doable, but it's not going to be as supportive as this one. So like if you're this size, you may want to try this one. If you're not, it's this one. But yeah, someone said we just need a shirt that says because boobs. Exactly.
Why don't you write shirt patterns because boobs?
Yeah, that's how I felt. I was like, at least with cardigans, you can make it a little, just make the, next size up, you can wrap, and
it doesn't have to fit perfectly. Because even when I'm trying to like freehand my own things or follow a pattern for something, because I do have larger boobs and smaller down here, so it's very hard to get it from this to all of a sudden this without it looking ripply. And like if you're trying to do that for other people, like if theirs are a little bit smaller or a little bit bigger, it's just like there's
my 2-year-old is semi-listening and keeps grabbing her boob when she hears you guys say it. Oh, that's funny. This is child friendly, at least. I do try to keep it family friendly on the Pink Sheep and Friends. At least I try to. So let me see. We don't have too much time left. Let's see. We got about 10 minutes. So I would love for you to share a little bit about your experience with this community as a whole and kind of what that has meant to you, not just as a designer, but also as someone who just enjoys crochet and yarn and all of that.
So for the first while that I was crocheting, I was never a part of any sort of groups. I didn't even know there were such a thing as crochet groups until like I had moved to Germany, and they ended up doing some sort of, like, I found out on a Facebook page that they were doing like a crochet meetup, and I was like, oh, other people crochet? That's awesome. Not that I didn't know that other people crochet, but you know what I mean. And I went to that, and people were talking about like crochet groups and stuff, and I was like, that's a thing? Like, people actually post their stuff everywhere? Oh, that's cool. And once I like found out that kind of stuff, I was like, oh, this is so neat, because like, you get, when people like your stuff, it's like, oh, look, because my family has always been very supportive. Like, they're like, oh, you're so cool. Like, this is so awesome. And I was just kind of like, yeah, but you love me. I'm not that kind of person that I have this major issue where I don't actually think my stuff is awesome. So I'm like, you're being nice to me, because I don't want to be that person that, my family is like, oh, you're awesome. And I'm like, oh, I'm so amazing. But then my stuff actually sucks, because they're just being encouraging. But then when I saw it from like a Facebook group and some people were like, oh, this stuff is so cool, I was like, oh, so it's okay? That's nice.
Yes. I really am cool.
I'm okay, thanks. But you get it both. It's been a blessing, and also like I don't post in a lot of crochet groups because my stuff isn't accepted. Like, either they find my stuff offensive, or like the costumes that I wear they find offensive, and I don't have time to argue with people. I'm just kind of like, hey, if my belly button offends you, I don't know what to do about it. So there's only a chosen few groups that I'm actually in, because I know that like in general, they're going to accept the fact that, I have tattoos, or, that, I wear tutus and stuff like that. But like those kind of groups and stuff, I absolutely love. And I love seeing other people's work, and people have been just extremely supportive. Or it's also helped for me, like if somebody steals a pattern, or if other websites are like posting my stuff, the community has been just amazing with, you know, they're right on the ball with it. Like, you know, they'll go to like the website and report it and stuff like that, which I can't do by myself, you know, unless it's a singular person. Yes, I can message them and be like, hey, you can't steal my pattern, you know, but if it's a whole nother, like a whole thing, other people can go report it. And they've been, honestly, everyone's just been amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think that the community, the fiber community in general, is very large. And I think that it has been a blessing in the fact that people have been willing to niche down and create groups that are specific to certain areas. And you can really find a community that's perfect for you, or multiple, you know, multiple groups or areas of crochet, and really find your people. And I think that's what's crazy is like just how tremendously large this community is when you start including, you know, dyers and spinners and weavers and like anyone who loves yarn. You know, there's really a space for everyone. It just may take some digging to find that.
I do like that, being able to find, like, because you can post in other groups and things kind of, you know, they don't really get it. And like, there's no, like, everyone finds different things amazing, you know, like, oh, like, all I like to make is clothing, I don't like to make anything else, or all I like to make is blankets, I don't like to make anything else. And it's like, for me, I love all types of crocheting, you know, but also I'm fully aware that at no point will I probably make a blanket. Like, I don't have time. I have seen glorious ones where I'm like, someday I'm going to make this. Will it happen? I don't know. But being able to find your people is amazing. Doesn't mean that other people can't be your people as well, you know, like, you know, people that do clothing or Ami or stuff like that. Like, they're still all my people, but I know my people are like, you know, the ones who like to do kind of kooky things, and they accept the fact that, you know, I'm pretty weird, and they get my humor and stuff like that. So it's, you know, it's like, oh, sweet, these are the people that I normally hang out with, or, you know, and then the other ones I'm just kind of, you know, I'll be in there and be like, oh, this is super cool. Like, I'll never make it, but it's awesome, you know, type thing. And it's even that way on TikTok, to where there seems to be very like particular areas to where people are like, oh, we're only part of this. I'm like, you guys can be part of everything. You just, you know, you may like other stuff more, but you can still be, I think it should be a community as a whole, and then you still have just little pockets to where, you know, you may like stuff more, but that doesn't mean that anything else is not great.
Yeah. I would love for you, before we go, if you would love to talk a little bit about, because the way that you were talking about finding your people and, you know, knowing that they accept you for who you are and know that you may be a little quirky or a little weird, but a lot of that comes from the fact that you're willing to be yourself. And I feel like there are a lot of people who, when they enter the world of social media, whether it be Facebook groups, whether it be trying to sell their stuff on Instagram, they kind of feel like they have to maybe be a certain way, or maybe not show off their personality. How do you feel that plays into? Is it important to just show off who you are?
I think it's important just to be yourself, because like for a while there, I would try to do what I've seen other people do. Like, you know, either your thing is on like a mannequin head, or you're just posing very nicely on something. And you can only fake it for so long, you know what I mean? But once I finally realized, so we were in Germany, I didn't have access to everything that I wanted, because I had always pictured about doing backdrops and costumes, and, you know, you know, it's fun. You get to dress up all year round. But I didn't have access to that kind of stuff. So once I got back to the US and I realized I could do all that kind of stuff, I was like, you know what? I can finally be exactly who I want to be. And, you know, was it going to offend some people? Yeah, absolutely. But do they matter to me? No. Because somebody's always going to be offended no matter what you do. You know, it's so you just find the people who appreciate you, and then nobody else matters after that. Like, I get hateful comments, I get that kind of stuff. I'm just kind of like, I'm not for you. That's fine. But other people like me. So, you know, it is what it is. And it can be hurtful sometimes, but then after a while, it's just kind of like, what are you going to do about it? Like, it's somebody on social media. Like, they're not going to say that. They're not going to come to my house and say that to my face. So
and I feel like the more you're yourself, the more avidly supportive people show up. in your life, you know, because they really are like, this is really who this person is, and I really like them for who they are. And I feel like it's a never ending positive cycle on that side. You're going to have the negative, like you said,
Yeah.
but I feel like, and not just that, but if you're being yourself and you're doing something that you really enjoy, like dressing up and having backdrops, you're having fun.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you can. It's not like it's still. I mean, it's still absolutely work, like doing all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
it's still like, oh, well, you know, this is something cool or fun I can do. But also letting people see exactly who you are. Like, there's a lot of people out there just like me, and I'm sure that a lot of that, because I've had people be like, oh, I really appreciate seeing you do stuff. This, you know, just being weird or any of that kind of stuff, because they're like, I've been embarrassed to like show people what I like or what I want to do. Like, you know, they don't want to wear a crop top, or they didn't want to wear a tutu for something, or, you know, they didn't feel like, you know, like it would be too much to wear a certain type of hat or any of that kind of stuff. And then it's not like I'm saying it's like, oh, well, Natalie said it's fine to do, so I can do it now. But it's more of a, oh, well, this person is doing it and they're not getting a bunch of hate, so maybe I can do it too, you know, type thing. And that's super important for me, because I think that everybody should be themselves, unless like they're a total jerk, then maybe don't be yourself.
I like that.
But other than that, like if you're a little weird, or like even if you like completely normal stuff, there's people out there that like completely normal stuff. There's people out there that like crazy things. There's people that like things that look really, really weird, and it's kind of like, oh, that's interesting, but okay.
Yeah.
You know, there's other people that will like it. So
exactly. So we have like 3 more minutes, and I did want to ask you, you know, I think I asked you this when we chatted before, but what is the last or current, if you're working on something now, personal project that's something for you?
Well, right now, so I'm working on.
Yes!
I probably should do a trigger warning. It's a clown. So I am working on him currently. The pattern is by After Dark Crochet, and I just kind of, I did change the face because I wanted to do it a certain way. But I'll show you this, which kind of a secret. Let's see if I can get this off here. So I will be doing the video and stuff on it.
I love all of these things behind you too. Like there's so many amazing things on this shelf behind you. So oh my gosh, you have come so far just since we talked.
Yeah, it's been a there's been a lot of frogging involved. But so that's my Halloween thing, which I've been putting off for years because I was intimidated. There's 2 good things about having self-doubt. One is, well, there's the good and the bad side. Like I don't think I'm the best at stuff, so it does help me thinking all the time that I need to improve. Although on the other side, it does also keep me from trying stuff. Because I'm like, that looks too hard. So this is one of those things that I had planned on doing a while ago, but I was like, I'm not ready. Like, I'm not sure if I know how to do this kind of stuff. And then finally I was like, you know, I'm just gonna try it and see if it works. And I was finally at that point to where it worked.
And I wanted to ask, because I know a lot of people use, is it the Surged Dream Coat? Was that the base that you used for that? I feel like a lot of people use that as a base for
so for hers, I did use like the base and then the concept style for the rest of it. The only part that I followed exactly was the skirt portions, and then the rest I did have to modify to like make it actually work, because her shoulders are drop shoulders, which won't work for me. So then, you know, I kind of had to change everything, but I still use like the whole concept, and that's why there was a lot of frogging, because I would put all the panels together and then put the sleeves on. I'm like, crap, it's too heavy, so then I had to take everything apart and then redo the whole thing. It should have gone really fast, other than the fact that I had to keep frogging.
Yeah, I completely understand there, and not as much. I haven't done anything that detailed, and I think I feel the same way. I feel like at some point I want to make myself something that's a little more intricate, because all of my designs are so simple. And that was kind of my niche. You know, there was a point, you know, so things could be really fast, really simple for people who are like really intimidated by clothing. But it does make me sometimes like, man, I feel like I need to push myself and like make something, even if it's a personal project, even if I use someone else's pattern, something that pushes me a little bit more than
that one is. It's an amazing coat. Like, people do that thing all the time, and you really don't need to adjust it. I'm just like, I get to where like I need things to fit exactly the way I want to, and that's the only reason I adjust stuff, is because I'm like, it, you know.
Is this for Halloween this year? So are you going to be able to reveal it this year?
Yeah. Well, that's the plan. So I'm doing that, and then the doll, and then I'm gonna try to crochet over some shoes, because which I have not tried to do, which I don't know will work. If it'll work, I want to make the shoes to match and everything. But you just picky. Yeah, I'm pretty picky. But yeah, you should definitely try that. And I think it's important to like push yourself on something, because like for me, clothing, for years I would not do it because the sleeves. I was terrified. I don't know why. I'm still kind of like iffy with sleeves, you know, because if you want a certain type, like more, I don't know what they're called, like not drop shoulder, like that scares me. It's scary.
Yeah, because you have to figure out that panel has to decrease here.
Go a certain way and stuff, and it, like, for years I would not do clothing until I came across Stephanie's onesie pattern, and I have an obsession with onesies, and I was like, oh, okay, it has sleeves, but I'm gonna try it.
Yes.
And that's where it started. We're still like, I don't make a lot of clothing, but I do like to like push myself into something that I'm uncomfortable doing, and then if I fail, then I pick it up, try again later on, and be like, okay, I'm not at that point. But I think it's important to always try to push yourself a little bit, because that's the only way you're ever going to improve. And I'm not saying like you're, you know,
I know.
You're never going to improve if you're, you know, but like that's for me personally. Like, I know I'm not going to improve on anything if I don't push myself to try it, because there are people that have been crocheting for like years and years and years, but they still make the exact same thing that they pretty much started off doing, which is totally fine. But you're never going to get past that point of doing something more difficult if you want to, you know what I mean?
Yes.
If you don't push yourself to try it, even if it's scary. That would be my
well, and I think that circling back around from trying to push yourself, there are so many avenues to get support. So like you said, if you, for instance, someone buys one of your patterns as a way to kind of push themselves into that next level, then you have the Facebook group that's like, this is where maybe you go into the Facebook group and say, hey, I need some moral support, because this is my opportunity to push myself. I'm going to try something. And
people do that a lot. Yeah.
And I think they'll be amazed at the amount of support that they'll get from people when they ask for it in that kind of way, you know?
Yeah. Cause I mean, I've had beginners do stuff to where they're like, I've never read a pattern before. And I'm just kind of like,
yeah.
Somebody save me. But you know, people, you know, they'll post in there, and people will, like, sometimes they're completely surprised, where I've had beginners, and yes, they knew how to read a pattern, but other than that, like, they really didn't know much of anything. And they were like, this was actually, like, I was terrified to do this. And I was like, but look, like, some people I've been blown away till I was like, oh my God, I can't believe you did that. Like, it's incredible. And, you know, you won't know until you try something.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you came on today. This has been fantastic. I've had a lot of people saying that they've really enjoyed the conversation. I'm so glad. I hope that if you guys are not already following Natalie, that you go give her a follow. Check out her Facebook group. If you joined late, this video will still be available on my Instagram feed. As soon as it's done, I try to post it directly to the feed. But you can also watch it on YouTube. So I have a playlist that's got
YouTube.
Yes, I've got all of these. I think this is episode like 34. So that's exciting. I know. So if you want something to binge watch while you crochet, if you want to make some new friends, discover, you know, I bring on designers and dyers and, you know, anyone in the community who's interested in chatting. And But you guys can watch it over there if that's easier. It's easier to bookmark, I think, on YouTube. And I'm going to reach out to you, Natalie, after we get off of the live, and get some information about some of the things you mentioned that I can link to. So some of the different patterns and people that you mentioned, and I'll put that in the description on YouTube, as well as maybe a link to your Facebook group so people can find that more easily. And I think that's everything. But I'm so glad that you came on. This was fantastic.
I was very nervous. I get very uncomfortable.
No,
I was not uncomfortable, but I was sitting here like.
I usually get sweaty. Like that's usually like I'm like, oh, I just need to put a little more deodorant on or something.
People normally take me as very, very confident. I am not.
It's tough.
So,
well, we will have to do a recap at some point. I'm to the point now where I'm trying to plan ahead and be like, these are people that were super easy to talk to. And, I have questions that I did not get to, so I feel like that's something we could totally do a follow-up if you ever wanted to, maybe down the road into maybe next year, see what you're working on and what's new and just checking in with people, So it's a great actress, right?
Yeah. I know. I shouldn't be crocheting. I should be an actress.
Yeah.
Kidding. Except for I don't like other people in the room when I film, so I feel like that would be a major issue.
Yes, all of my stuff I do by myself too. I feel like when my husband was helping me, because he used to help me take my photos, and it was still really awkward because I was like, I don't know what the camera is seeing, so like I felt awkward in front of the camera. And once I started doing it on myself, like using Bluetooth and things like that, I was like,
easier to do it by yourself, unless like you're having to run, or like there's a chosen few videos where I had to be like, okay, can you help me?
Yes.
Because most of the time it's just very awkward, trying to look like not sexy, but trying to look whatever. And then when normally I'm very goofy and awkward, so when I'm trying to like be different, it's just kind of like, stop looking at me, it's uncomfortable.
I know.
So he'll
even walk like, now I have to refilm this.
Yeah, he'll walk in when I'm filming. I'm like, do you need something? Like, why are you? Because it's like
no, you can't watch.
We're trying to look sexy privately. Stop.
Yeah. Well, thank you again so much. I hope you have a great weekend. I hope everyone who joined live, thank you. Watching the replay, thank you as well. And I hope that everyone has a great weekend. And we'll see you guys next time.
Friday.
Yes.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
I'm so glad.
I need to look at your sweaters too, because I do want some sweaters to add hoods to, because that has been my plan to do for in the next couple of months, add a bunch of hoods to sweaters.
I'm going to send you a couple of options, and you can choose which one you want to try.
Thank you.
All right. We'll talk soon, guys. Bye.
Bye.